And right now we have on the Straight Talk Express, Virginia's Attorney General and presumptive 2013 Republican gubernatorial nominee, the one and only Ken Cuccinelli. Mr. Attorney General, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and welcome to our first anniversary show week.
Well, congratulations and Merry 10th day of Christmas.
You just named the new campaign manager, former executive director of the Virginia Republican Party, David Rexroad. Some people have criticized David because he was part of the team that was supposed to deliver Virginia for Republicans in 2012. Didn't do that. Why'd you pick him as your campaign manager?
Dave is obviously a Virginian himself. He's got many years of political experience in Virginia. And as political activists will tell you, one of the problems we often have is that because we have the odd year election cycles, we have a lot of people coming in from outside Virginia who end up running campaigns. And while that may have its place, and we will have people who aren't from Virginia who will undoubtedly come in and help us, our whole core team, including Dave Rexroad, are Virginians. They've all run Virginia campaigns before. The rest of the executive team thus far is the core team from our 2009 campaign. Dave fits in very well with that. I particularly appreciate both his grassroots experience and, more importantly, his commitment to grassroots one-on-one campaigning, which is how we intend to run our race. And when you're running against somebody like a Terry McAuliffe, whose greatest strength as a candidate is his fundraising ability, then you've got to be ready to win while being outspent, and that means good grassroots, and Dave Rexroad fits in well with that.
Mr. Attorney General, that makes sense. By the way, if you happen to bump into Terry McAuliffe on the campaign trail, would you ask him to come on our show and maybe return our phone call?
I've never met him in my life, and that's a little bit strange for someone like me who lived in Northern Virginia for over 40 years, and I've been active in state-level politics for over a decade. To not even cross my path suggests to me you haven't been all that engaged in Virginia, and I think that's going to be one of his problems.
Mr. Attorney General, would you label Mr. McAuliffe a carpetbagger?
I think that the Washington Post said it pretty well, and if I'm quoting the Washington Post against a Democrat, you're already in trouble. And when they said that he's a Washington insider and a Virginia outsider, I think that describes it well.
We're going to think about putting his picture on a milk carton box. Have you seen me in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe? Anyway,
I'm sure we'll see plenty of him as 2013 rolls on, and I look forward to someday meeting him.
All right. Now, Mr. Attorney General, Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell just signed off on permanent regulations that will hold abortion clinics to the same building standards as hospital, joining Arizona and Michigan as states that are looking to tighten up their abortion facility standards. This particular piece of legislation got a lot of opposition. As you transition into a gubernatorial campaign, do you think that these kind of social issues are going to play well with the general electorate?
Well, first of all, it had bipartisan support. It couldn't have passed without it. And second of all, the focus in 2013 is going to be the same as it was in 12 and 9. As long as our economy is in the state that it is, far and away the number one concern of voters is going to be economic opportunity and how that translates to their financial opportunities and jobs. And we've been bumping along economically for actually more than 4 years now. And as long as we're in that state, that's going to be voters' top concern. And when you're running a campaign, you don't just talk to people about what you want to talk about. You talk to people about what they care about. And as it happens, what they care about, is what I'd like to talk about, and that's the economic opportunity and expanding personal freedom in the economy, and how you go about doing that. I think Bob McDonnell focused on that in '09. I will actually say that I think I changed a course from previous attorneys general of both parties, actually I should say attorneys general candidates of both parties, by having an economic focus in 2009 rather than the usual drumbeat of criminal justice issues that you're used to hearing.
Right.
We have worked very hard on public safety, whether it's gang prosecution or gang prevention or healthcare fraud recoveries, sexually violent predators off the street. We've done a lot of those things and gotten better at them. We've commenced efforts for the first time to fight human trafficking. My office is the central hub, the clearinghouse in Virginia for fighting human trafficking. We've done all those things, and yet our focus in terms of more manpower and in terms of focusing on constituent concerns has continued to be trying to help our agencies operate better to get Virginia's economy moving, and that'll be the focus in a gubernatorial race.
Mr. Attorney General, what did you think of the Republican compromise on the fiscal cliff, where basically in the House, 85 Republicans voted for what you might call the Mitch McConnell bill? What did you think of that?
Well, I sort of found it interesting how it came about and the course it took, but, honestly, my focus on Washington was for the election, to get folks elected who would pursue smaller government. In Virginia, we got 8 Republicans in the House, but we did not win Virginia, as you noted earlier, for Mitt Romney. And so you get this mixed control in Washington, and I think we're going to continue to, as a country, sort of see a little bit of a muddling through, because they're all challenged with how to achieve the goals each of them ran on when they're differing goals. And I think that's going to be it's going to be difficult for them, and it's going to be frustrating for us as we go forward here until we get some commitment from our perspective to smaller government. And that's what I'm looking for out of Washington, is that they're out of balance. And there are people up there who are committed to getting in balance, and I hope that they're able to make headway.
Mr. Attorney General, let's go to water. The EPA under Obama is now attempting to regulate water in our state as classifying it as a pollutant. We understand that this is, if this comes down, it's exceedingly costly. We can't find any proof behind it. What will be the position of the Attorney General on the EPA's effort?
Well, I was personally in court last month arguing against this, and it's egregious because the fairly partisan Democrat Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County joined us in this lawsuit. So I've done a number of things on the federalism front in my time as Attorney General. This is the first time that all 3 levels of government, federal, state, and local, were in the same case as parties. It was Fairfax and Virginia facing off against the EPA, and the reason it was Fairfax, for your listeners, is that is where the creek that they're trying to regulate the flow of water into is located. The Acton Creek. It starts near Mount Vernon there, ends near Mount Vernon, George Washington's home.
Right.
And if we lose this case, just in pure monetary terms, it would cost Fairfax around $250 million for the remediation that EPA wants.
Unbelievable.
And it would cost VDOT around $70 million.
Makes
this is for one creek, and it's to control the flow of water into the creek. Well, they don't have the right to regulate water. They don't have the legal authority to regulate water, which is our basic point
right
at this stage of the case. Also, if we lose, this this would effectively get the EPA into local land use decisions via stormwater regulation to a degree that they've never exercised before.
Incredible.
That is a tremendous federalism concern to me. It should be a great concern, and I know it is, to many of our local governments. And in a sheer dollar standpoint, over $300 million would be enormous. But this is, again, for one creek. I mean, multiply this around Virginia.
Yeah, by hundreds.
And we have a major problem.
Unbelievable. Well, we appreciate your fighting that. It certainly seems to us to be extended federal overreach. If I can get back to politics for a second, Mr. Attorney General, the incumbent Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling, who was on our show on Wednesday, said that he's not ruled out an independent bid for governor. Have you been able to reach out to him at all? Have you two had a dialogue?
You know, what I've observed since he's decided, or at least announced that he wasn't going to get in the Republican nomination, which he can still do. The sign-up date is a week from today for the Republican contest. His statements haven't suggested that he would really like to talk to me, and I have no desire to irritate the man. He's got 20 years of good Republican service. He is a Republican, and so I'll just leave it at that.
What would you make of statements by your fellow Republican on this show that you are too ideological in your positions and not prepared to govern the Commonwealth effectively if you are elected governor?
Well, Bill and I have served together in the Senate. I was in the Senate while he was lieutenant governor. He was in there before I was, and I think if you looked at our voting records, you wouldn't find much difference.
As you go forward in your campaign for governor, your predecessor, Bob McDonnell, has been exceedingly successful in a lot of areas. He's now looked upon as one of the most popular governors in the United States. How would a Cuccinelli administration in Virginia be different than what we've seen out of Governor McDonnell?
In some ways, it would be very similar. Certainly, the same top priority of focusing on economic opportunity would be the same in the Cuccinelli administration, and that would dominate. You need to start with what's likely to be the same, and that's going to be the same type of priority. I may go about it a little bit differently, but the same priority is going to be number one. Most of the differences would tend to be stylistic. I mean, I was an attorney general. I am the attorney general as he was before he was governor. It's a spectacular window on agencies. He had a government reform approach. I will too. Mine will be a little more different. He took a broad approach. I'm going to take a more narrow-focused approach, sort of an agency by agency, and try to get a small number of agencies to do complete turnarounds. But during my tenure, when you do something like that, you have to face the fact that you do only have 4 years, and if you want to change corporate cultures permanently, that takes an awful lot of focus, an awful lot of effort. So he brought a government reform approach to being governor. I will too, but where his was a broader approach, mine will be a little more focused and try to penetrate some bureaucracies that perhaps might just try to wait out a governor as opposed to and then kind of kick into their former ways. And we're going to try to make permanent changes to the corporate culture. I'm a big believer in establishing and maintaining corporate cultures that are positive and optimistic and constructive. And I think some of our agencies could really benefit from that.
Okay, Mr. Attorney General, we appreciate your time today on our show. Thank you so much for joining us. If you would, for our audience, anyone that wants to get more info on how they can get involved with your campaign, where do they go?
Cuccinelli.com, Cuccinelli.com. It was easy to get the domain name. I just had to beat my brothers to it.
Cuccinelli.com. All right.
And for people who want to read about things like the EPA lawsuit, we have our Cuccinelli Compass, which they can sign up for there, not the ordinary political newsletter. And when the order comes out in that EPA case, I'll write up the analysis as I did recently, write up the argument, and we'll talk through the real-world consequences of that federalism decision. And we'll also keep people up with the campaign that way. So we'd love it if they'd go there, sign up, and of course we're on Facebook and Twitter as well, and we're pretty active there. So we'd love to have people join us. We're going to need volunteers. As I said, Terry McAuliffe will raise plenty of money. We need people power, and that's very consistent with how I've governed, and that's how we campaign. So but that takes a lot of help from a lot of people. We'd love to have it.
People
Thanks
power.
very much. And like I said, Merry 10th Day of Christmas.
And
Merry
thanks
Christmas.
for never avoiding the tough questions. We appreciate it, Mr. Attorney General. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, the only people who do that just don't seem to come on your show. So
See? There you go. He's got it nailed. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General.